Dr. Akiva Gamliel, Belk, Dean of Jewish Studies at Noach Torah Institute, LLC. Welcome to Bereisheit. We're in Perik Tet Vav, that's chapter 15 of Genesis, and our discussion is prophecy. And our textbook is Gematria and Mysticism in Genesis, Book 2. I hope that you'll pick a copy up. A lot of material we won't be able to cover in this video. Please pick a copy up. Also, for those that are unaware, we have another book which preceded this. Pick a copy of Gematria in Genesis, Mysticism in Genesis, and that's Book 1. Now, dear ones, we have 4 Gematria words that we want to look at in this particular discussion. When we look at the word Bamachazeh, we recognize that God came to Avram. This is before his name was changed to Abraham, and before Sarai was changed to Sarah. This was in the year 2018 from creation. So this is when God spoke to Abraham, to Abram, and said, Lek, go into the land of Eretz Canaan. And so Abram and Sarai came to the land of Eretz Canaan. They were there a while, and then they returned to the land that Terach was in, Mesopotamia, and Haran. And 5 years later, we read in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, Lech lecha, and God said, go, get out. And so to get out from your father's house, your place of birth, away from your relatives, get out. That was more forceful. And so Abraham needed just a little nudging, a little shoving. Do you ever feel like you need a little nudging? Oh my, if the Creator's nudging you, you better be careful. God help us, please. Anyway, so the first visit to the land of Eretz Canaan was in 2018. The second in which he stayed was 5 years later in 2023 from creation. Now, in this first trip to the land of Eretz Canaan, that's discussed in chapter 15 of Genesis. And this is known as the vision that Abraham, the part between the pieces. This is when the creator of the universe makes a covenant with Abraham. And so we recognize that Abraham went into a Bamachazeh, into a state of vision. He wasn't necessarily asleep. He wasn't necessarily awake. His mind was perceiving what God was saying to him. He was having a spiritual experience with the creator of the universe. Now, we read about this in the Torah, in the Holy Scriptures, in the Bible. And we recognize that this discussion was about B'nai, about sons, about children. Abram, was very concerned because he had no children. And he was planning on leaving all of his estate to his servant Eliezer, the faithful servant in his household. God said, no, you're going to have a son. And it's going to come from your own womb. And so what this is mystically here, we see that in a vision that he is going to have a son, a child. We also see that in a vision, Abraham's children can receive perceptions, can receive revelations, which is nice. It's a mystical understanding. Now, one of the great things that we observe right there in the beginning of chapter 15 is that the Lord said, I am your shield, and that is Magain. Oh my, dear ones, the world has its challenges. It has its really rough spots. It has its thorny bushes. It has its lightning strikes, so to speak. And it's just, for us, it's unimaginable what it means when God says, Magain, I am your shield. Oh my. In our world where so much tragedy can happen and so much difficulty can transpire, to know, Magain, that the Lord is your shield. So here Avram's gone into this new land, a land that he's completely unfamiliar with, and the Lord is reassuring him, Magain, I am your shield. We recognize mystically that the word lemiheya is to preserve life. And that is also the gematria of 93. So we have the gematria of 62, and we have the gematria of 93. So we recognize that the intent mystically is that God is our shield, and God is our shield to preserve our life, to preserve life. Now, there's such a thing as preserving our life, and then there's such a thing as preserving life. Our sages teach that an individual who has no children is like an individual who's dead. And so it's kind of like this, it is like this. An individual that has no children cannot pass sayings of HaTorah along. An individual who has children that are not observant cannot give them the sayings of HaTorah. They will not receive it. Their hearts are hard. They may be stone hard, but they can't seem to receive it. And so it's really important to have opportunity to preserve life. And so God protects us with his shield. And God willing, the intent is for us to be able to also preserve life, to be protected to preserve life. So, dear ones, as we look at prophecy, we recognize that God wants us to know about the future. God wants us to have understanding about the future. I think the issue so often is, will we take the time to listen? Will we take the time to study? Will we take the time to learn about God's prophecy? Thank you for joining with me.